How's it, everyone? Welcome to another video. Now, I want to welcome you to the channel if it's your first time here. In this specific channel, we talk mainly about marketing and business. And if that is something that excites you, if that is something that you want to learn more about, then this is the channel for you. So I want to encourage you to like and subscribe for more content like this. Now, in today's video, I want to break down what the actual online store makes in profit. You know, revenue doesn't equal profit. Maybe you've heard that saying. Number one. But number two, I think everybody has this misconception of how much money do you actually take home when you start to grow an online store. Because we see all these agencies, we see all these gurus out there going, hey, we're going to double and triple your revenue. But at the end of the day, what is it actually going to cost you in order to do that? And how much money can you actually make in terms of profit for yourself in order to take home, to cover your bills, your family's needs, etc. And that is the most important part, the bottom line. What is the actual bottom line of an average type of e-commerce store in South Africa? Now, before I dive into this, we need to understand that all the stores are different, right? There are different types of percentages for all kinds of industries, but this is just a collective across the board. We've now worked with over 500 businesses, I think actually now close to 600 over the last few years. And this is just the data that we've collected. Okay, by no means am I saying like every single store is going to be this way. I'm not trying to proclaim that this is your future. However, this is just the data that we've collected. Like it, don't like it, it's just what we have to present, and I thought it might be interesting. So let's start with looking at the revenue, then we're going to break down all the different types of expenses, and then we're going to have a look at what's actually left at the end of the day. Now, just a side note, I'm not sure if you knew this, but if you made 500,000 Rand a month with your online store, then you are basically in the top 10% of all online stores in South Africa at the moment. If you're doing 1 million a month, then you're in the top 2%. And if you're doing over 2 million a month, you're in the top 1% of all stores in the country. Now, just put that in perspective. Okay, if you want to be a top 1% business, you're going to have to do over 2 million a month in revenue. Now, we have built our own businesses doing this and more. So just keep that in mind for yourself when you start to set goals and ambitions. It's not impossible to do it, but getting to the top 1% means you're going to have to do what 99% of other people don't do. All right, and that's just, I know it sounds like a bumper sticker, but it's just true. So for this example, we're going to break down a hypothetical business that's doing 1 million a month in revenue. I think that's a nice, easy number to use. And the percentages that we're going to be using is based on businesses that we own ourselves. We have an agency called VA Media. So there's about 130 clients in that agency, but then we also have VA Capital where we buy and invest in businesses ourselves. And a lot of the data, percentages and cost, etc. I'm going to be sharing is going to be mimicking those business models basically. Now, some of those businesses are doing a lot more than 1 million a month in revenue, but the percentages and the breakdown of costs will technically be the same. So let's start with our hypothetical business of 1 million a month in revenue. If you are doing 1 million a year, then you're going to have to register for something we call VAT. Okay. Sorry, I almost tripped over my plug here. So VAT. And VAT equals 15%. That means that technically 1 million Rand, 15% of that technically belongs to SARS. However, now you can offset a lot of your expenses to VAT. You know, every time if you VAT registered and you buy an expense on behalf of the business and there's VAT on that invoice, and you've structured it correctly where it shows your actual VAT number, etc., then you can obviously offset 15% of that expense to the VAT that you have to pay to SARS. So if we had to look at 15% of 1 million, that'll be 150K, right? So in theory, 150K is not yours, but actually SARS's money. But what you can do is all the expenses that you've had for the month, a lot of that can be offset to VAT. So in the ideal world, let's say you're really good at structuring your VAT and tax protectioning, etc. You've got maybe like a full-time CFO or financial person in the business that helps you do these things. You can offset 50% of that, if not more, to VAT. But what is 50% of 150? Just keeping it simple, is 75,000 Rand. So 75,000 Rand will have to go to VAT from that 1 million. So in theory, how much do we then have left? We then have 925,000 Rand left after paying VAT. Okay, so that's now technically what we've got left. But now remember, you can't run a business without stock. Okay, so every time you sell products, you technically have to take the cost of that product and reinvest it into more product, because if you don't have product to sell, you can't actually make money. So in order to do that calculation, let's say that you run at a 50% GP. Okay, that means that if you made 925,000 rands worth of sales, that 50% of that, in theory, will be the cost of the product. All right, so what is 50% of 924? It's 462,000 rand. So if we had to deduct 462,000 rand from this, I think that is the actual number, minus 462,500, which is our COGS, cost of goods, then this is what we will have left. So now we paid VAT and we paid cost of goods. So we've replenished our stock. And what is next? Well, in essence, in order to grow a business, you're going to need to have a marketing budget. That is literally the most important thing. Yeah, you need packers and staff and logistics and all these things, but none of that is going to exist if you don't have a really good marketing strategy. Now, to generate about $1 million a month online, you're probably going to have to spend roughly between 150 to 200,000 rand a month on marketing, I'd say. This is just based on my own experience. So if we had to deduct another 200K of marketing, we now have, what is that, 262,500 rand left in the business. Okay, so we've spent 200K on marketing, we've replenished our stock of 462K, we've paid our VAT, etc. Now the question is, what else do we have to pay? Well, shipping is probably going to be, or fulfillment as a whole, will roughly be between, I'd say, 8 and 9%, depending on the type of product you sell, 8 or 9% of revenue. Okay, so if you're sitting at $1 million, then 8% will be roughly 80,000 rand. So 80,000 rand will be for fulfillment costs. So we've got fulfillment cost. So if we had to do the math on that quickly, that will be 182,000 rand, I think, if I'm not mistaken. 182,500 bucks will be left after fulfillment. So now we've paid fulfillment, we've paid marketing, we've paid cost of goods, and we've paid VAT. What is left? Well, rent. So you can get away with if you're doing $1 million a month in revenue, you don't need again, depending on the type of product you're selling, but let's say you've got 15 grand for rent. You can make it, let's make it 20. That's maybe a bit excessive depending on, I don't know, let's make it 20 for rent. Now we've got 162,000 rand, 500 bucks left. Okay, so this is where we are now. So we've paid rent, we've paid fulfillment, we've paid marketing, we've paid COGS. The other thing is, every time you make a sale, what happens? Well, a percentage of that money goes to the bank, a transaction fee, if you will, to the merchant that you're actually using to facilitate that transaction. And that percentage can easily be 4 to 5%. Now, yeah, I know a lot of people are going to say, but Jandre, PayFast is 2.9, and you know, Peach payments can go down to 2.6 hypothetically, and that's all true. But when you have an actual merchant, for example, like PayJustNow, which every store I believe needs, then it allows the user to buy the product for 0 rand upfront cost, and that whole amount that the product is worth can be paid over a few installations. Which is great for them, because the pain of forking out 500 to 1,000 rand is not immediate, and it's spread over 3 to 4 weeks depending on the merchant that you're using, PayJustNow, PayFlex, HappyPay, etc. Okay. The reason that's important to have that is because that will dramatically increase your conversion rate. However, how these merchants make their money is that as opposed to 2.9% they charge you like PayFast, they charge you 5 to 6%. Okay, so if you look at having a PayJustNow, and if you have maybe something like PayFast, even though PayFast is 2.9 and PayJustNow will be hypothetically 6%, then it's the actual transaction fee for the whole business will be somewhere around the middle. So let's make it 4%. So 4% of $1 million is going to be 40,000 Rand. And that will be payment fees. And if we deduct 40,000 Rand here, it's going to be 500. And that is where we are now. So now we've paid payment fees, we've paid rent, we've paid fulfillment costs, marketing costs, etc. And let's say that you have a salary bill of, let's say, 40,000 Rand. Again, I don't know how you negotiate salaries with people. I don't know what roles and responsibilities you have, but maybe you need a full-time picker and packer, maybe 2 of that. If it's minimum wage, you're going to look at, like I'd say, and you want to pay someone fairly to do that kind of work, 7-8 grand a month, maybe a little bit more. But let's say you do 8 times 2, that's 16. Maybe you have someone working in the business doing administrative work. Let's say it comes down to 40 grand of salaries as well. This is just if you're keeping the business as lean as possible, obviously. Then you're left with 82,500 Rand. Okay, now again, this is just hypothetical numbers, but that's technically your profit before tax, which we call your PBT. So 82,500 bucks is a net profit of technically 8.2%. And I know this looks ridiculous and it looks like a very small amount, but the average business in South Africa actually runs at 8 to 12% net profit before tax. So that is the average business. So you can see that these hypothetical numbers is not far off. This is on the low end of the average benchmark. Okay, so let's say your marketing is really good, and you maybe, as opposed to 200K, you spend 150K. Maybe your fulfillment is streamlined and you're using shipping aggregators, etc. Maybe you're saving a bit of, on fulfillment fees. Maybe you're not paying 20 grand a warehouse, but you're paying 15. Maybe you're keeping the business super lean with only 2 people in the business. Your salaries could be a little bit less. Maybe you were really good at structuring your VAT, so you got more back on that. Then essentially you can get to 12%. But this is roughly what the average business has left. Keep in mind, guys, again, this is before tax. And what is the average tax percentage? It's 28%. Now, 28% of 82,500 is roughly, I did the calculation here, 23,100. So that's 23,000 Rand. Let's say that you're really good at streamlining a business from a tax practitioning standpoint, and you only pay 10 grand tax or 12 grand tax, okay? After 12 grand, you've got 70,000 Rand net profit. Boom. That is what you have left. So there you have it. This is essentially what running a business actually looks like. And you can now see that it's not that simple to make, millions a month in profit for yourself. You will have to run a massive operation in order to get that right. And that just gives you a level of perspective of how much work has to go into it to build a really amazing business. Now, there are businesses that run at 15 to 20% PBT. That is very possible to achieve. Please don't think that this is every single business. However, this is the average that we've seen. And I think lastly, from my point of view, it's understanding that you have to think in numbers if you want to grow a business strategically. Otherwise, you're going to look at your bank account all confused, frustrated, and not having the answers to know how to fix the business. And you're going to start looking at fixing the wrong things. Sometimes you think it's your marketing. And we've had people grow their revenue by 200, 300, 400% and then cancel. Why? Because they didn't understand how to actually keep the business streamlined financially in order to make a profit. So even though the ROAS was healthy and the actual POAS from the ads alone was healthy, all the other expenses stacked up, and it became so bulky that it actually became more than what the business needed to survive. And the only way to fix that was to either streamline the business operations, or it had to be in a situation where you had to double the revenue, because at some point the profit will actually start to offset the fixed costs of the business so that you can actually make a profit. And I think nobody talks about these things. Nobody really shares insights on it. and I felt like this was cool, an exercise to do, and I hope there was value in it for you. So the biggest takeaway here is you need to get better at streamlining your business financially if you really want to build a successful business. So in the next video, which will probably air next week or so, and we're going to unpack these numbers just as a quick overview again, but then I want to provide you guys with a few tips and a few things on how to actually streamline the finances in order to ensure that you build a profitable business. Okay, a few things that you could potentially do from a marketing point of view, a few things from a logistics point of view in order to ensure you put more money away for yourself so you can grow more profitably. Right, again, if you enjoy marketing and business content, then this is the channel for you. I hope there was value in it for you. And drop a comment if there was a lesson, a takeaway moment, or if you have any questions. Happy to reply and give you my perspective. Much love to everybody. Cheers.